It's always nice to be able to load work in a cold kiln. If we had just fired this kiln, I'd have to put a cold brick between the floor of my pot and the hot kiln shelf to prevent this from maybe cracking. Now the shelf is pretty cool, so I'll just set the piece right inside. The first firing is the one that you want to put your favorite pieces or your best pieces or your most delicate pieces in. That way they heat up very slowly with the kiln, and the chance of thermal shock isn't as great. Another thing that you might want to do is to light the burner when it's on top of the kiln rather than when the barrel is inserted inside the burner port. So I'm going to turn the blower on first. I'm going to make sure that this blower flap is in the closed position before I open the gas valve. If I had it open, I would blow out my flame because I'm going to have a very small flame here. Open the gas just slightly. Light it. You'll notice that the barrel of the burner is just barely inside the burner port. If you put it in much farther than that, it'll heat up and then burn itself away. I have the valve about 1/3 open. In 10 minutes, I'll put it to half. And 10 minutes later, I'll open the burner all of the way and then fire the kiln to maturity. That should take roughly an hour, give or take. We've had quite a rain here earlier today, so I'm going to get this sawdust ready to go. I never like to use sawdust that's too dry. I'll dampen this down a bit. It's better if you can mix it with some sawdust that's been used or burned a lot. That's starting to be a nice mix right now. What I'm going to do is make a small nest over here for the small piece. That should hold that one. And of course I need a larger nest for the throne piece, which I'll do right here. Now this nest I'm going to line with straw. That'll start a real strong flame. Fit that. The drama of the Raku process, as we know it, is not dependent upon what takes place inside the kiln during the metamorphosis of firing, as much as it does depend upon what we do with the pieces when they come out of the kiln. And this is known as reduction or post-firing reduction. And to this, we owe a lot of thanks to Paul Soldner, who is the man that is solely responsible for discovering this process. And I think he discovered this roughly 20, 30 years ago in Los Angeles when he was doing some demonstration firing at the Los Angeles County Fair. He had taken some pots out of the kiln and placed them on the ground, and they had accidentally rolled into some leaves. And he had noticed that where the pots had fallen into the leaves and caught on fire there, the leaves had turned the clay black and brought out some copper luster in the glazes. So ever since, we've been post-firing reducing our pieces, and that is what Raku is to us here in the West. And I think if you understand in theory what goes on, you'll know how to reduce your pots, and to do that, run with luck in the reduction process. What we do is we take these pots that have been fired to roughly 1900 degrees Fahrenheit, we take them out of this hot kiln and place them into an environment that we can deny oxygen from. Now, this is generally a garbage can, either with a lid, or a pit in the ground that we can put a lid over, or we can totally enclose it with sawdust. But what you want to do is take this hot pot, put it inside this container that has a combustible in it. And the standard combustible is generally sawdust or straw. And what happens is this hot pot will ignite that combustible and cause a flame. And as soon as that flame reaches its maximum capability, you want to put a lid on that container, and you want to smother that flame. Now, before that flame dies, it hunts and searches for oxygen. So where does it get the oxygen from? Well, it robs it from the clay body and from the glaze. And it takes oxygen from these objects chemically, and thereby changing the clay from white to a smoky gray to a jet black. And if it's a copper-bearing glaze, it'll convert the glaze from a greenish color to hopefully a copper, or a red, or a violet, or a purple. Even some ranges of yellow can take place in there, or yellow-greens. And if you understand that process, you'll know how important it is to get these pots out quickly from the kiln into the reducing atmosphere. Now, you want to follow it up by leaving these pots in that reduction atmosphere until they cool. If you remove them from the atmosphere sooner than 10 or 15 minutes, they're still warm, and they'll start to respond to oxygen or to the atmosphere, and they'll reoxidize. If you want to take them out sooner than 10 or 15 minutes, you want to make sure that you arrest that color by either quenching them or hosing them down with water, and thereby preventing them from reoxidizing. So, as you can see, there are some variables at hand. How fast you get the pot out of the kiln into a reducing atmosphere, how much of a flame do you create in this atmosphere, how airtight is the atmosphere, the reduction atmosphere, even how much sawdust do you have, or how much straw do you have. If you have too much straw, the reduction is too strong, and some of your glazes are forced to go to a dark, lustery color, and you lose some of the more brilliant reds of your coppers. Also, there are atmospheric conditions, the kinds and type of sawdust that you're using, the dampness that's in the sawdust. In fact, I prefer to fire maybe on some of the hottest days of summer. I seem to get my best reduction results. Now, if you're using a glaze that doesn't contain copper, such as a white, crackly, glossy, shiny Raku white, what you want to do is you want to have a strong atmosphere so that the crackle pattern is smoked or reduced and thereby enhanced. Now, these pieces don't have to come out of the kiln as quickly as a copper-bearing glaze, but still they have to undergo the post-firing reduction process. And you're about to see us do some of that as soon as the kiln here reaches maturity. The kiln is ready when you look into the flue opening and see the pots glowing. They should be a very, very bright reddish orange. In fact, the Japanese have a word for this effect called liquid sunshine. Just before I pull these pots, I'd like to shut off the air supply and get a little reduction taking place in the kiln for about 20 or 30 seconds. And from here I'm going to shut off the gas. You guys want to pull that? Maximum flame, tight seal. Just put a little sawdust in there. Now, this one I'm going to leave for a little bit. What I'm going to do is take the can off of this pot and then totally cover it up with sawdust. When I say totally, I don't mean totally. I like to leave the top exposed so that the pot can cool a little bit. If I were to cover up the pot entirely, it would just stay too hot inside. But now I've got my surface covered, and that's getting the reduction. What I'm going to do on this small piece here is uncover it slightly so that the white crackle can become exposed, and I'll cover it up again. This causes the white crackle to develop a stronger crackle pattern. What I'm going to do is uncover this gradually, and then as the color appears, I'm going to quench it. It's a little too soon yet. Let's put this back together. Just wait just a little longer. As soon as this color starts to oxidize, I quench it almost immediately. Got to keep it cool for a little bit here. It's still pretty hot. Take a look at this other one over here. Well, that one's cooling down. Do the same thing to this one. I can find it. It's good. Yeah, this one looks pretty good too. The white crackle's covered with a lot of carbon, as you can see right here, but I'll clean it up with a steel wool pad. And it should be okay. Got a nice copper effect here. Little focal point right there of color. This yellow you see here is the mason stain that we talked about in the tape-on glazing, mixed in with the white crackle. Just cool this one down a little more. This one's a lot thicker than the throne pot, so it's going to hold the heat longer. I want to make sure it doesn't reoxidize because of that. Yeah, the white crackle looks pretty good on here. Yeah, those pieces turned out pretty well. This is a hot kiln now, so we have to load it with gloves on and also put some kind of insulating material between the hot shelf and the piece. Now this piece is just going to rest on one corner, so I'm just not too worried about it. What I'm doing here is using this brick to balance this piece on. Otherwise I'd have to build the kiln wall up a little higher. So I'm going to fire this one at a slight angle. Now Jim is putting a cold brick between the pot bottom and the hot shelf. This way his pieces won't crack. Yeah, it looks great. Turn the blower on, then the gas. Now we'll keep it on low for about 10 minutes, then we'll open the valve all the way. Yeah, a little bit of straw down here to start the reduction process. And I've put some here in this piece of stovepipe I'm going to use as the reduction container. And I'll put a lid over this. It just doesn't want to stabilize. Yeah, Jim's got a white crackle glaze, so he's not going to bury it. He's just going to smoke it a little bit. What he's going to do now is expose it to the air, causing the glaze to cool even more. The glaze is starting to crack a little bit. Now he's going to smoke those cracks so they're really well defined. This tall piece that I took out first, I'm just going to allow it to smoke in the container for maybe 15-20 minutes. He has a white crackle glaze on a white clay body, so he's going to have a nice white. Rather than wait, I'm kind of curious. See, normally I would have just allowed it to fume and just pull its color together, but looks like it's going to be okay. Yeah, that worked out rather nicely. That's going to clean up beautifully. Just beautiful. Great crackle. Yeah. That's terrific. How's the other one look too? Well, we had a good day, Raku.
Sure did.
Had a good sunset to go with it, too. Oh, this is beautiful, Jim. Just gorgeous. Just gorgeous.